Hey everybody, Neon here. Another analysis video straight out of the Artifact beta. This actually came from my own experience. This is one that happened at the end of a Gauntlet run that I did playing a green-blue control deck. So hopefully you find that interesting. Before we get into it though, first I want to remind you about the overall structure of what's going on here. First, I try to cast it and go through it as it's happening live so you can see the overview of the entire game. And then at the end, I'm going to do a little bit of analysis, more deep dive of a couple of specific interesting moments. Before we get into all of that, though, I do want to remind you about the submission page that I have, that you have an opportunity to win a $5 Steam gift card if you submit a good game, the best game for the week for me to analyze. I'd love to get some submissions for that. I also looking for good comments too, people who have ideas about plays that I would have missed or additional information that I didn't capture while I was actually discussing the game. Also, I want to remind you that Ink Gaming is one of the sponsors for a+space games. They do some wonderful stuff, and so be sure to check them out, to check out all their wonderful gaming gear. They actually have a sale coming up, I think, really soon. That's around Thanksgiving and Black Friday. But with that, let's get into the game. So a couple things that I want to talk about specifically in this video. I think that one of the lessons that you actually pull from this one very clearly is how a bad early game isn't that big of a deal. And if you lose your heroes in the first couple turns, if you have a rough early turns of the game, you can actually get back into the game and win it. Because you'll very much see that the early game does not go very well for me in this one. Like right here, we start off with a duel. First things first, don't even get to press a button, and already one of my heroes is dead. So that's a great start for things. Obviously, I press the button because I can't do a whole lot here, and I take 8 damage. On to the next lane. This is actually a lane. It's always important, I think, to analyze lanes and kind of like what they look like and where you think things are going to be going and how they're going to function. That is one that looks like it's okay. This one does not look okay. Obviously, the matchup between Bristleback and Treant is not spectacular. I can't buy anything. They can. Hopefully they don't buy anything too spooky. But now the question is, where am I going to be putting my Venomancer? I think that the one of the skills that you'll learn that's pretty important in Artifact is to quickly do some analysis of which lane is best, of just the calculations of where is my hero is most likely to die, which is really important for blue heroes specifically, because I mean they die a lot. That's their ability. They're really good at being repositioned. Is a way to frame it. Yeah, like so here for example, in the right lane, if the Magnus goes in there too, it's still only like a 50-50 shot that he's going to be in front of the Magnus. Has a 50-50 shot of being in front of just the creep, and if the Magnus didn't go there, it was definitely going to be in front of the creep, which means that he's probably going to survive, where in some of the other lanes, like for instance, if she comes in here, there's a 1 in 3 chance that it would be in front of the Legion Commander, in which case, totally dead. But yeah, like being in front of Magnus isn't the end of the world. This creep spawn there, though, being in front of the Legion Commander is obviously actually really good. Actually, maybe not obviously, because I lose the creep for it, but I would far rather not take the 6 damage there and just have the creep eat that, because right now, obviously, that first lane isn't going very well. A couple things to note, though, that are going on right now in my hand, and just in the deck in general. If you notice and look carefully, you'll see that I have the Earthshaker in my deck, and which is obviously a really good card for clearing in the late game. So I already am thinking about trying to set up that Echo Slam in my hand for the late game. I also have multiple of these Roseleaf Druids that will hopefully ramp me out and be able to do something in this mid lane, because it's obviously going better than my right lane as well. So first lane going very badly, but I'm hoping to get a sweeper off there. Mid lane going well, and then the third lane also not doing spectacular. My Venomancer did have a good land there. I do compel the Bristleback to stop it from killing my Treant. This is setting up for them to trade next turn. My opponent just kind of going ham here, applying a lot of pressure. It's interesting that they played the Mercenary Exiles here as opposed to in the first lane. I guess that they played the Standard Barrier in the left lane. I think that's probably wrong, though. They probably should have played it in the right lane in order to stop it kill my Venomancer. That would have been pretty strong. But I'm not complaining. So where do I place things? I actually decide to go left with both of these blue heroes, I believe. on the assumption that one of them is probably going to die, and I want to keep the other one in the lane, hopefully. Now, I want one of them to land in front of that standard bearer, because that's obviously like the dream, actually, for a blue hero in these lanes. Like, putting something like a standard bearer in your deck is actually a cost, because it is often going to be doing this kind of role where your opponent's hero can just kind of like nestle in front of it and kind of be protected in a weird way by the standard bearer. Also, it's definitely not impressed as a way to get in damage, because just the nature of the positioning system, you're always going to have something on only one side, basically, when you place it, unless there's like a weird positioning thing where there's a hole when you place it. Other than that, it's usually just going to be buffing one creep at a time for at least the first turn. I mean, obviously now we've had another round of creep spawns, so that's why that's working that way. Now, this position, by playing the So Venom here, this is one of the moves that I was the most curious about. This is literally just saving 6 damage, basically. Like, the creep there on the left was going to be attacking the Zeus, so that doesn't make any differences in the damage. I guess it makes a difference that the creep on the left, the ward on the left, is going to stay alive, and that might do something over the course of the next couple of turns, and you absorb even more damage later on. Yeah, this is the counter here for it to get that down, so that it doesn't actually save me any damage there on the left side. It really just saved me 6 damage. I kind of think that that's fine. Maybe that was a little bit too conservative there, but I honestly was happy with that move. I probably should have spawned him on the right-hand side beside my my melee creep in order to maximize the chance of him getting a little bit of extra damage on the Lycan there. That's just a mistake for sure. I just think that that's probably wrong. Positioning of that, of like whether you go on the left or the right, is surprisingly important in some situations, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just nonsense, but sometimes it really matters. The Revtail Convoy. Yeah, and they have 5 at this point. Yeah, this is also definitely a mistake for them of placing it in front of the one that was beside the Treant Protector. You notice through the game that my opponent definitely makes a few mistakes, which is fine. We're all learning the game. But yeah, I'm thinking here of just playing another So Venom once again, just to save some damage. Right now, obviously, the Treant Protector is trading with the Bristleback, which is kind of what I want. Also, by the way, the logic here of why I'm playing the So Venom as opposed to the Relentless Zombie to trade to save life, rather, is solely for the purpose of the Relentless Zombie costs less, and I kind of want to save it for a better application of knowing that it's going to like being in front of the Bristleback or something like that, maybe down the line. Vernus's Blessing, landing that on the Magnus there. Also, yeah, the one on the center wouldn't have died had he not done that, so that's a good thing to do there. Get a little bit extra damage in, thanks to that Lich sacrificing the melee creep. Now, it might look like things are not going great. I've had 2 heroes die just that turn, and I had a hero kill in the early game too. So at this point, if we were to just tally out the hero deaths, I've had 3 heroes die versus their 1. So that seems pretty rough, and you would, if like you're taking stock of what the game looks like right now, you would probably say this game is going very badly. But that Echo Slam in my hand and like the late game potential of a blue deck like this is pretty spooky, and it's worth considering like how things are going to look over the course of that, like those multiple turns. So I decided to play with the Relentless Zombie here, I believe, in order to protect against some more damage. Like, all I'm interested in is minimizing damage. Like, this might seem like overly cautious here, but you see, like, they're getting in a lot of damage like this as well. Now, technically, maybe I should have waited. I probably should have sequenced this differently, of starting with a So Venom first and hoping for that to land in good places, so that if they did do something like play the Ogre on the left-hand side, then I would be able to place the Relentless Zombie in front of that to actually minimize damage that I was taking. So that is actually a mistake. on my behalf for sure. So the point here of why I did not play the Pike was actually to keep the Sander Bear alive for the purposes of Echo Slam damage. So just, I mean, obviously I had that kill that was available to me with the Pike, but that's kind of why. Also, I've been really liking Pike in controlling decks like this because it's still not very expensive, but it gets like real damage in. Short Sword is better, I think, in some aggressive decks when you already have like pretty beefy units and you just kind of like need to give them a little bit of a buff. This one, it's actually quite good at that. Okay, so this works out really well for me. I guess the Thunderhide pack out, lands to the right, does curve properly into the Lycan. Maybe I should say that my genius plan of playing that out was for the purpose of the previous turn in the position that I did was to get the Thunderhide pack on the right hand side, but works out, and they intimidate their Lycan into the left hand lane, and it's hard for me to know whether they know how bad that is for them, because that's really, really bad. Because I'm clearly setting up like an ultra kill on that left hand lane with the Echo Slams in hand. Yeah, so like, I mean, like on something like Venomancer, like you're hoping for him to just like stick around. You just like, you're very happy to have him just kind of like dirtle around and waste time for people, and then over that time just gains little bits of attack. So that's worked out quite well for me. I've been happy with that. This is actually definitely wrong. I don't think that this play is correct at all. Maybe this is just me kind of wanting to spend the cards in my hand, which is not a particularly knowledgeable and interesting strategy. But yeah, I just play out the Lost in Time. The reason why, I'll discuss this a little bit later about timing a card like that. I think in an earlier video I had said that I wasn't crazy about Lost in Time. It's fine. As a card, there are definitely some situations that it's quite powerful, and then it's quite annoying for your opponent or yourself if it hits you. And here was one that I think that I timed it basically exactly wrong. And you'll see here, because what I'm planning to set up this like major turn next turn where I Echo Slam out like half their heroes, or 3 out of 5 of their heroes, so they're not going to be casting spells anyway, right? So I think that given that, I think that it was a pretty big mistake. So 26 on that tower. My other one, my left one, is on, at a single-digit life total. No gold to purchase anything. Have my 2 heroes coming in. Bristleback is... I can't remember where Bristleback comes in. I think that he comes into the center lane, the right lane, rather. We'll have to see. One of the things also that I will note is that the opponent gave me initiative going into this round, which was definitely a mistake. Like, if you have access to something like Duel in your hand, you're going to feel like an idiot if you get Echo Slammed like this. I mean, I don't think that they were playing around Echo Slam at all, with doing things like intimidating their Lycan into the left-hand lane. By the way, Champion of the Ancient is like exactly medium. Also, I think that that little ping on the ward gave me exactly on the Ogre, which is obviously important for keeping things alive. But yeah, you're also seeing here maybe like my preference for trying to fight for all 3 lanes a little bit. Like, I think that it's a lot easier to do than people realize sometimes, and especially like if you're playing a deck that struggles to really push down an Ancient, like it's often good to do this and make the game kind of drag out a little bit, and like if your opponent has those tools and you don't, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you try to just push down 2 lanes. But yeah, the Troll Soothsayer coming out here. Also, you'll notice that I am keeping the Zeus in the mid lane as well. This is really for the purposes of just maximizing my mana, basically. Like, there's a lot of cross lane blue stuff that's available, like Thunder God's Wrath. I have also, or lane independent stuff. So Thunder God's Wrath, card draw effects, stuff like that. Like, it's all when you have those kinds of cards in your deck, or it's good to build your deck in such a way that you have some of those cards so that you can use a hero that's just lost in the dead lane like this. But it allows me to just like use my mana more effectively. I take on this one for a little while. I do end up going for the Echo Slam, I believe. I'm really not sure about this one. I think that, yeah, I do end up going for the Echo Slam just because I wanted to kind of like out-tempo them and push them off the board as much as possible for these next couple of turns is, I think, my plan. So that they're not going to be able to take down this lane. I have a decent amount of material here still. And Lich here is going to kill my Venomancer, which is unfortunate, but, you know, could be worse. Also, getting that damage on both the Bristleback and the Lich has the potential to set up a kill with something like Thundergod's Wrath in the future. We'll see that. Yeah, little battery notification there because I was just doing a screen recording. Very nice. Like when plugged it in. Yeah, so get the attack in there, move on to the next round, shopping phase. I have a boatload of cash, so I basically buy out most of my shop. This is given the fact that I'm on a control deck. Obviously, most of my items are pretty cheap. I think that the most expensive thing is something like the musket that I'm playing. Muskets are great, by the way. Oh, by the way, like the Remesk vestments, I have been enjoying having one of those in my decks recently. I don't know how other people have felt about them, but I think that it's decent as a one of. Treant going to the left lane. The purpose is, of course, for this is to just play out some more of my green stuff because I have more green spells than anything else. And I want to just, like, kill the tower. And right now I'm not able to do that. But yeah, like if you look at the lock cards in their hand, like they're down to 1 here, so that means that they're going to be coming off cooldown at the same time that I would be getting into that. Diabolic Revelation, by the way, this is kind of an experiment because I saw I had 2 Treant Protectors in my deck, which meant that there was a lot of times that the Diabolic Revelation damage was going to be negated. The card was mediocre. The visual effect is sweet, but the card was, like, not great. And I don't think then that you really should be playing this in normal, fair draft decks. But this Rose Leaf Rejuvenator, oh baby, that feels so good. Getting back up to 14 health. Also, like, having the Earthshaker in this lane still with his Fisher ready to go, it feels amazing, man. It's going to be really hard for him to die because he has all this health, and the opponent is, like, if they commit too hard to the lane, I then either Echo Slam them again if I find another copy of that, or I will just maul them with the Fisher to buy a bunch of time. Yeah, I think a cunning plan here, just for the purposes of cycling a card, which is obvious, which is honestly, like, right a lot of the time. Like the role of cards like Cunning Plan and Compel ultimately is, in the early game, it keeps your blue heroes alive, and then after that, it just has a bunch of applications of, like, setting up damage, cycling for a card just for fun kind of thing, like just to get the card flow. Because obviously, right here, I'm looking for more high impact stuff than that. Getting a lot of work done in that center tower. I do end up going for the Champion of the Ancients here. This was a card that I believe I do anyway. I think about it for a moment at the very least. But yeah, this is a card that I've had mixed reviews about, or I've heard mixed reviews about. In this situation, it's obviously pretty good. He's beside a Treant Protector that obviously slows things down. Also, by the way, right now, I'm kind of trying to bait my opponent into doing something like sacrificing that creep, because I'm really clearly showing off that, like, oh, okay, I'm trying to line this up, and this gives you a card for doing that. You'll also notice how I, like, sequence the cards first. Is you had this Champion of the Ancient come out before I played the equipment, because the equipment really telegraphs that I'm going to be killing this little creepy guy. So yeah, I do this now with the Assassin's Veil, really just trying to, like, encourage them to do that, encourage them to do something, because really what I do want is I want initiative going into that third lane, the first lane rather, because if they commit heavily into that first lane and I have a chance to Echo Slam them, then they're dead. Yeah, just buying up a short sword, not because it's a particularly interesting item, exactly, just I want more damage on a lot of my guys. Like, when you have things like Venomancer and Zeus and Earthshaker, you need to find ways to get some damage in, and just even going up from 2 to 4, it doubles the amount of damage. You should also know that that Lich on the right-hand lane has not had a good game. I don't think that they've cast, like, basically any black spells. Definitely didn't cast a Chain Frost, which feels pretty good. Thunder God's Wrath is sexy. Also, the reasoning why I put the second Venomancer into the left-hand lane, or the Venomancer into the left-hand lane, and having 2 blue heroes there was for the purposes of if something like this were to happen, and it means that I can still cast my Thunder God's Wraths if I want to. Because if I only had 1 in there, then maybe they just duel me, and I kind of have my power used up for the turn and wasted for the turn. I do end up deciding not to go for that play, though, and instead should try to build up some board pressure, because I figure that I should be able to soften them up, like their heroes up over the course of the next couple of turns, and then get off an actual really interesting like multiple Thunder God's Wraths kind of turn, like kill 2-3 heroes in the single turn. Like, that's much more powerful. Yeah, so what I'm going to end up doing here, yeah, so they just kind of go back and forth of doing this. They do end up playing out the Traveler's Cloak. I don't know why they choose that particular moment to do it, but, you know, you're allowed. Yeah, now I go for the Decoy. I swap with the Treant, getting him out of harm's way. Still soaking up that damage, which is, of course, very important. And I play out the Pike. So now, not only am I going to get in for 11 damage with those 2 on the left, my 2 heroes, but they also grow and are actually able to take down that tower pretty soon. So that makes a big difference in my mind of the impact of cards like that. Of course, warp him out. I think I just fire off a Thunder God's Wrath because, you know, why not? I have it in hand. May as well do something useful with it. Like, it doesn't really accomplish a ton right now, but hopefully it'll lead to something interesting kind of down the line. It doesn't always have to be like this super thought out thing of this is exactly what I'm going to accomplish with it. I didn't even realize that this was going to do it, but it's a nice little touch that I got the 50-50 to kill the Lich on the upkeep right here. Lycan apparently doesn't have a lot that I can do. I have no idea what this is in their hand. I really honestly could not guess. They have been playing very, very few cards. That they just, I mean, maybe it's been a result of this positioning that I've been putting them in and really getting them to struggle here, that they just haven't had very much that they can do properly. But man, they have a ton of cards that they're just not using. Mists of Avernus on the left-hand lane. Obviously, this is the place where the action is happening. So I'm interested in just buffing up that lane as much as possible. I probably shouldn't have even done that. Yeah, so now they play out the Wolf. I don't even think I should have played out the Mists of Avernus, to be honest. That's probably a mistake. Because having initiative in that left-hand lane is so valuable. Because I get to play out my Earthshaker there, and there's 3 positions where it could land up and end up, and either in front of the LC or in front of the Magnus are both really devastating, because I can just Fisher them and then shut down anything that isn't like a lot of their plays. The Bristleback does end up going into the left-hand lane too, as you can imagine, given the fact that they're almost dead there. They only have 1 life left, and so yeah, the Earthshaker does land in front of the Magnus, meaning that a Fisher is going to lock them out of green spells, and it's going to make it really difficult to block down all of this damage. The Bristleback isn't in a great position either. So, yeah, Mists of Avernus comes in. Yeah, they just concede at this point, as you can probably imagine why. So, yeah, that was the game. It was an interesting one, and you just wanted to emphasize in that, like, how badly the early game went. So let's go through and do some analysis of a couple of the interesting moments there. So to begin with, I want to do another hero deployment exercise, figure out what we're going to do with our Venomancer. I know I talk about hero deployment a lot, but that's because it's really important. If you get your hero deployment right, you can kind of just cast cards, at random, and you'll do decently well. If you get your hero deployment wrong, though, it can really spell disaster in quite the hurry. So this is part of the reason why I talk about it so much. In this case, we're going to focus just on the exercise of saying, assume that our opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, and that we just want to focus on having our heroes survive, how our Venomancer survive. If we put it to the left lane, let's first say that Magnus isn't entering. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the Venomancer is going to land in front of the Legion Commander, in which case it will die. The other 2 positions, it'll be in front of a creep, in which case it will live. The chances of curving, of the Legion Commander curving into the Venomancer are kind of low. I could probably solve that if I really wanted to, but for right now, I don't really feel like it. But it's not very high. In the case that Magnus joins the fight there is now a 50-50 chance of being in front of a creep, 50-50 chance being in front of the hero, and of those heroes, obviously, Legion Commander is the worst, and Magnus isn't quite as bad. So that's the situation in the top lane. In the middle lane, it doesn't actually matter what happens with Magnus. There's a 100% chance that we are going to be in front of the 4/4 creep. In the bottom lane, if Magnus doesn't enter the lane, then we have a 100% chance of being in front of a 2/4 creep. So that's nice. If Magnus enters the lane, though, we have a 50-50 chance of being in front of either the creep or the Magnus. So ultimately, that means that we have in the bottom lane a 50-50 chance of being in front of a 4 damage unit and a 2 damage unit. In the middle lane, we have a 100% chance of being in front of a 4 damage unit, and in the top lane, 50% chance of being in front of a 2 damage unit, and then the other 50% is more than that. So basically, taking all these things into consideration, the bottom lane is just the best in terms of minimizing damage. This also contributes to other objectives, though, because I have the Capel in my hand that I'm hoping to try to keep the Treon Protector alive for a turn so that he can trade with the Bristleback as opposed to just feed to it. So for example, with the Bristleback right now, if I can compel it into the creep, for example, then that would be pretty good. But yeah, so this kind of exercise, just get used to trying to do this in your head as quickly as possible. Maybe not quite as thorough as this. Maybe you just have an intuitive sense of it. But sit down and think about it every now and then so that you can get better at crunching these numbers. Because you want to try to offload some of this mental RAM, mental space, to doing these kinds of decision-making processes. Because they come up a lot and they're really hard. So I would really advise you to try to do your best to get good at these. Okay, so in this juncture, the reason that I want to talk about this is about the overall planning to the game and how I am planning to end up winning the game. The top lane is very clearly a disaster at this point. It's getting out of control. They're getting a lot of damage in. I want to Echo Slam that hopefully before they take the tower. In the middle lane, that is obviously going fairly well for me right now. It could change, but I'm hoping to be able to take that one without too much trouble. The bottom lane, not going great, but it's also not totally horrible, and hopefully I can just commit a little bit of resources there and get back into it. The reason, though, that I'm articulating this is that a lot of this hinges on that top lane not crumbling, because if that falls apart, then my opponent can just totally abandon it and move to the other lanes, and I'm in a lot of trouble there, especially for instance in the bottom lane. Keeping that up when it's already in a rough situation might be a difficult game. But so I want to try to maximize the chance that I get off an Echo Slam in the top lane before my opponent is able to take the tower. And how I do this then is actually is this move right here on turn 3 or the mana turn 5. I'm going to get to mana 7, but by doing this, there are a couple things that can happen. One, I can get one of my heroes in front of the Legion Commander and it just feeds, and that's fine. The reason why is that sucks up 6 damage, that saves me a bunch of health, and then they're out next turn for mana turn 6, but they come in on mana turn 7, and as long as I play for initiative, I should be able to Echo Slam them before a duel or something like that comes in and kills my hero, or maybe a Chain Frost, something like this. So that is, like, having one of them die, not actually the end of the world if it lands in front of the Legion Commander here. If one also lands in front of the Legion Standard Bearer, that it doesn't take any damage, it doesn't suck up any damage, but it also means that it should be able to stay around for a couple of turns in the lane. So in this situation, I almost think that I got the best possible spawns. Maybe it would have been better for the Zeus to show up in front of one of the creeps that was buffed by the Legion banner, but in this situation, this was my decision making for this, because I just know that this maximizes my chances of being able to set up that Echo Slam that ends up winning me the game. And it's also just worth emphasizing that coming up with the plans as to where you're going to be taking towers, what you want the different lanes to look like over the course of the next couple of turns is pretty important, because if you don't really know what you're planning to accomplish in each of the lanes, then it's pretty easy to just kind of find yourself playing cards kind of at random, and especially your hero deployment step is going to be really, really hard. So always kind of have a plan for each lane of what do you want it to look like 2 turns from now. And because like that, you can do that. And for me, I want it to look dead in 2 turns from now because of that Echo Slam, and I think that's achievable. So I've made a plan, and I've tried to achieve that. For the next suggestion and point I want to make is about this just happens here where my opponent plays out their Traveler's Cloak on the Legion Commander for no clear reason. It was just in their hand, and they're like, hey, I like having more health on my unit, so I'm going to stick this on there. But when you're using items like that, especially kind of like throwaway quality ones, like Traveler's Cloak, I mean, it's a good card, but like, you often have multiples of them, and you're going to get them later on in the game if you need them. It's good to double check if you need it somewhere else. In this game, you're going to see that the Bristleback dies shortly thereafter by battling with the Treant Protector. There's no excuse for this. You could just have, say, the Traveler's Cloak and trade more favorably, and like that's no loss to you whatsoever. So that's something that I would say was a pretty noticeable punt from my opponent, and you should avoid doing the same. So the last thing I want to talk about for this one is the card Lost in Time, because this is one that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of how to use it properly. I have come around to the idea that the card is good in certain situations. You can't play very many of them, obviously. It doesn't affect the board in any way. But in many ways, Artifact comes down to a battle about who can actually use the cards in their hand. That's a very important aspect to the game, because you're so often locked out of certain kinds of cards in certain kinds of situations because of the hero mana system. So in some ways, it feels like every game of Artifact is like a kind of a prison deck mirror, because you're trying to both shut one another out of playing the game properly. And this contributes to that in a really powerful way. But you have to time it and sequence it right. In this game, I played it right before I was going to Echo Slam 3 of their heroes out of the game. Are they going to be casting very many spells during that time that 3 heroes are off the battlefield? Probably not. And as a result, like, part of the effect of this card was just wasted. It would have been much better to wait until next turn, so that right at for instance, the beginning of that turn, they have locked out for that entire turn, maybe take them off of a couple key plays, like even on their turn that they have a bunch of their heroes gone, and then when they come back, they're still locked out of the game for a couple of turns afterwards. So with that, though, that'll do it for today. Be sure to check out the submission page if you have any games that you saw that you're like, hey, this is really interesting, I'd love to hear Neon discuss it or share my thoughts on it. This would be a great place to put it. So check that out. Also, check out Ink Gaming, our sponsor. They do wonderful work, and they're going to have some really sweet sales over the next couple days, I believe. And so there's a link to that in the description below. Check them out. I also have a Patreon. I don't talk about this enough. This just supports all the sorts of work that we do at a+space Games, and this is a great way to give back and help me keep on doing this for you. And just, thank you for being awesome. There's a Discord too. You can come and join that. Love to have you there, and I love getting your feedback. The feedback makes a huge difference to me, and I've already noticed some big improvements on the content of it, and I even made some like differences in kind of how I edited this one in a few places, and let me know if you kind of like notice some of those differences and what you thought of them. But that'll be it for today. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.